Last week, I left the snowy slopes of northern British Columbia for Tucson, Arizona. I was eager to paint the desert views from the Tanque Verde Ranch, hosted by Madeline Island School of the Arts. Even though I come as an instructor, I learned so much through these experiences, through the dedicated painting time, the new views to explore, and the vulnerability of learning as I go while my students watch my process unfold. Tanque Verde welcomed us well, with a large, well-lit studio space, 3 delicious buffet meals a day, and beautiful views on all sides. One of my favorite places to paint was the wash, which was flowing with water due to the rain they'd had the week before. So the desert was a much greener place than I've experienced in the past. And for me as an artist, to have the combination of mountains, cacti, and flowing water, it was just a wonderful fuel for painting inspiration. Day 1 was focused on getting familiar with our space, with each other and with our subject. When painting a landscape, I believe that the first version shows you what you don't know. It reveals the gaps in your knowledge of the subject, any potential problem areas or weak spots in your design or technique. And it's from this first painting that helps me to start to develop a strategy for next steps to make the next version stronger. My first chosen subject was a scene I photographed on the drive from Phoenix to Tucson, a little rusty shack framed by desert shrubs and mountains. From there, I got to demonstrate ways to simplify the subject, strategies for getting to know my subject matter, and the sketches that developed from those exercises made for a much stronger painting when I tried that subject again. On our second day, we spent some time planning for plein air painting. We did a little bit of painting outside on the lawn, and we started thinking about the location we were going to be painting on day 3. And as an artist, I need to develop my own stylistic language for interpreting any new subject. I need to choose colors that feel right to me, shapes that depict the subject while also simplifying it. And to develop that language means I need to experiment. And the more free I feel to experiment, the more exciting my paintings and my visual language for this new setting becomes. This sketch of saguaro came alive with the addition of opera pink. And everyone in the room could see the difference this unexpected color made. It changed the energy of the room, actually, because it didn't just impact the painting, but it gave us that sense of freedom, creative freedom, so that I could put more of myself into my work, choose the colors that felt right to me, even if they weren't visible at first glance in our reference material. On day 3, I think it was one of my favorite days. We took our painting kits, our plein air kits, to the wash, a stream bed that, due to the rain, was flowing with fresh water. And this framing of rocks along the stream and the mountains behind, it brought some familiarity to the scene. I love painting the Rocky Mountains here in the north, and I had in front of me then subjects that felt familiar, even though the context was also unfamiliar, a landscape that I was still learning to paint. I demonstrated on location one painting, and then I did another half painting while we were at the creek, and I wasn't feeling very happy with it. So we took it back to the studio to develop later. In the afternoon, I used the visual notes that I took through our plein air painting on site, and I demonstrated that in the studio. It's also a lot easier to paint in the studio without the weather's challenges to contend with, especially because things dry so quickly in the desert. I really liked comparing each evolving version. I liked them each for different reasons. And with those 3 versions to compare to, it was a wonderful opportunity for me to talk about how to use a critique to help you to grow, and how not to judge your work as well. And with those 3 days of painting under our belts, it was a good time to take stock of what my students had been painting as well. I always make a point of walking around and looking at what students are working on, answering questions as they're painting. And at this time, I also invited students to bring work forward for a critique or guidance. My priority is always to offer growth-oriented guidance, just the same way as I would do for myself, to point out what is working well, to offer suggestions and options for strengthening the work in a way that aligns with the artist's own goals for their art. And being able to do that in person so I can ask questions, that helps a lot. On day 4, we're already starting to feel like this workshop was going to end far too soon, but we started the day with a delicious cowboy breakfast up at the original homestead. It's a stone ruin a little higher up the mountain, and on that beautiful location, we had a delicious pancake breakfast, and then we lingered to after breakfast to paint the view. And it was such a beautiful experience to sit in that sunshine, to listen to the birds singing and paint the view that just spread all around us. And I have to admit that we weren't very dedicated at painting. Our attention spans were a little distracted when a little herd of javelina joined us. I think they know that Thursdays are breakfast days and they come up to scrounge for breakfast crumbs. They took very little notice of our presence, but it just was such a beautiful reminder that the desert is so full of life. And it was really all around us. On Friday, our final day of painting together, I titled this in my head as Freedom Day. The goal for Friday was to paint with even more unapologetic experimentation, to put playfulness first and foremost. And I kicked it off by demonstrating a warm-up of stamping with paint rather than trying to control it with the paintbrush. It's one of my favorite exercises to teach. And a number of students had asked about exploring abstract painting. And so today was a great day to do that, to take what we'd been learning all week, the landscape we'd been painting, and to abstract it, to take our desert landscapes and push them further with courage and freedom. I've learned for myself that it's easier for me to make brave choices when I surround myself with the examples of other brave artists. And when I lead a workshop, I'm the one who gets to set that example of courage and playful fearlessness. It actually energizes me, and I could see that happening for my students as well. I left Tucson with 20 large half-sheet 15 by 22 inch paintings and 6 small 11 by 15 inch ones. That's a lot of painting, and every piece of paper that I brought had been used. I think that's a really good sign of a productive workshop. I'm going to plan to order a few extra sheets when I teach at Madeline Island School of the Arts in July of this year. Because I teach in both in person and online, I've started to realize that both kinds of painting education have their benefits. My online courses offer the time to work through the lessons slowly, at your own pace, and apply principles and techniques without comparing yourself to other artists in the room. You don't have to feel self-conscious. But an in-person workshop gives the opportunity for your instructor to immediately respond to your questions, for you to receive critique and guidance, and for a span of dedicated painting time where you can see progress unfold over days rather than weeks or months. You have the opportunity to paint without the distractions of everyday life. I mean, how great is it that even our meals were served to us? When an in-person workshop involves travel, like my workshop in Cornwall, England, coming up in September of 2023, these kind of workshops are focused on enriching the experience of travel through painting. Because we're traveling around a location, we're painting in order to be more present in our surroundings, rather than seeing the world through a viewfinder, snapping photos and moving on to the next spot. And when a workshop keeps us in one place, like Tucson, or my upcoming workshop on Madeline Island in Wisconsin in July, these feel more like an artist's retreat, an intense learning time dedicated to personal artistic growth. And so I hope that you can see and understand the different types of learning and how they might have their place in your artist's journey for the type of growth you're looking for or the experience you want to have. They all bring new inspiration, encouragement, and a wealth of knowledge and experience, not just to you, the student, but to me as an artist as well. And it's really the reason I love teaching so much. The relationships we build, the opportunity to grow together. It's really a wonderful sense of a love of art, watercolor, and community. Want to take a workshop with me? You can view my current workshop schedule at angelafehr.com.